fire! 3 directions. Fire in the hole! And then you wait 30 seconds. My little kids started to cry when that.
Hey guys, Jay and Mike back with a new video, but this time we're not checking out an abandoned location. We actually have something really cool and interesting that we want to share with you. Today we're coming to you from McDade Park in Scranton, Pennsylvania, home of the Lackawanna Coal Mine Tour. And in this video we're going to show you what you can expect to see if you decide to come here for yourself. We're going to walk around and show you the top part here, and then later on we're going to take you 300 feet underground and show you the inside of a mine that first opened in 1860. And of course we're taking you with us, so if you're ready, come along with us. So when you arrive here, you'll come upon this miner statue, which sits right next to the entrance to the coal mine tour facility. That way you know you're in the right area. So upon arriving here, you do have ample parking areas, and you'll see a few structures here, and I'll explain what they are. Back years ago, I'm talking about probably over 10 years ago, this building was the office where you'd go to get your tickets, and they had a little snack shop in there, and you can see there's a sign that says Hoist House. That's where the hoist operator controls the hoist to lower and raise the mine cart in and out of the mine, which you used to be able to go in there and check it out for yourself. I don't know if we could still do that. We'll find out. Up behind it though, that tan building there is the Anthracite Heritage Museum. That is separate from this. There is an additional charge for that, but it does teach you and show artifacts and everything about coal mining, and really a fantastic place to check out while you're here. It's only a stone's throw away from the mine tour itself, but again, that is not included with your admission here, but it is worth checking out if you're already here. So here's a sign stating the operation hours and running time from April to November. And directly behind it you'll find the ticket office, which is a relatively new building that was put in within the last, I want to say, 5 or 10 years. That is where you will go to get your tickets, but in between here and there are numerous things to look at as far as artifacts and objects and items and things to take pictures of and to get up close and personal with, including the Tipple over there, various mine carts, equipment, stuff like that. So you really do have a lot to look at. Definitely plan on spending a couple hours here, because the mine tour itself does last 1 hour, but you can easily spend a couple hours here just checking everything else out. Now the reason I wanted to bring you guys here today is because those of you that know me, who have been watching my channel, know that I have a love and passion for coal mining history. And having been in a few coal mines myself, I've really come to appreciate the harsh working conditions that men had to go through to make a living for their families. I know many of you have never seen the inside of a coal mine except for watching my videos or seeing pictures online, but that doesn't really do it justice. So if you ever wanted the opportunity to step back in time and go inside an actual coal mine, this is the best way to go about it, because down here you'll get a tour of an actual coal mine that opened in 1860, and you'll learn about the tools that were used, the methods of mining, and basically be able to relive the days of coal mining itself and see, more importantly, the harsh, incredible working conditions that people had to go through to put bread on the table. Now, even though this is no longer an active mine, the mine itself is inspected daily, and they do have a ventilation and lighting system, and you're down there with an actual coal miner. So this is a very safe, controlled environment, and you basically can be worry-free while you tour the coal mine itself, and to get a better understanding of what our ancestors had to go through. Now there is another coal mine tour in the area called the Pioneer Coal Mine Tunnel. It's located in Ashland, Pennsylvania, just over an hour away. And the difference between that one and this one is that mine tour takes you horizontally inside of a mountain. This one takes you vertically 300 feet below the surface. I definitely recommend, though, if you're ever in the area, if either one of them, take the time to take the tour. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you'll be able to see something that many people haven't seen in decades or ever in their life, unless they've been a coal miner or have seen videos or pictures or took a tour themselves. So highly recommended. You won't regret it. Now another cool thing about coming here is that we're able to see a lot of objects and items I've mentioned in previous videos when I've toured collieries and coal mine company sites and abandoned mines. And right here is a good example. myself and Cliff the Wandering Woodsman have been to the Glenburn mine site in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, and they had a tipple at the top of the mountain, and this is a good example as to how it would have looked in good operating condition. We also have an old shovel crane bucket here and various other tools and objects that they use for either strip mining, surface mining, or underground mining. We got some chutes here and some other stuff which I really don't know offhand. I'm not an experienced miner, but they do have information plaques to explain what you're looking at. Just to mention too, Mike is taking numerous pictures for his channel, Good Day for Decay. He will have a slideshow from our experience here today at the Lackawanna Coal Mine Tour. So look for his channel link down below in the description. You can see they have some pretty heavy duty mine carts here, ore carts. Some of these were used for hauling material, whether it be coal or waste rock. Others are used for transportation for the men to get down into the mines. This one is loaded up with, or partially loaded up with some waste material. Here's a closer look at this crane or bucket. Really cool old piece of equipment. You can still see some of the original color. It's like a bluish teal color. And we'll take a look at the operating cab. It's got like the old farm tractor seat, and you can see the inner workings of it here. Oh, there's actually a geocache right here. Definitely come a long way since the manufacturing of this type of equipment. Everything now is electronic and digital and state of the art, and this is all manual labor to push and pull these levers. Now the name there you guys may remember or might seem familiar to. I believe it's pronounced Buckyruss Erie, but we found one of these at the abandoned concrete factory slash sand quarry down near Palmerston, Pennsylvania. Same company, same manufacturer. That was a dragline crane or dragline bucket. This is more of a, I don't know the proper name, but it's more of a scoop bucket. Different operation, but same company that manufactured it. Okay, so just down from the bucket there, we do have the underneath of the tipple, which you're able to walk around and explore. Down here you'll find a bulldozer and an old dump truck. And they're basically just static props to help demonstrate how the processing took place. But basically, as I explained in the past, they would pull the loaded carts up there to the top of the tipple, and they would dump them into what is the hopper right there, and the hopper would then work its way down into the back of the truck, either for coal itself or waste material, but most likely for coal production to send out to deliver. And right behind it you will see a smaller hoist there, which was used to pull the ore carts up to the top of the tipple. So there would have been an operating cab down here for a controller to control the hoist, and you can see the thick braided cable would have worked its way up top to the big wheel up there, the pulley, and eventually hook up to the ore carts to pull it up to the top there. And again, it gets dumped into the hopper and then eventually lands its way down here into the truck. Right here we do have an old Caterpillar. Doesn't even have a cab over the top of it. And you can see the operator's controls. Very outdated equipment here. I manufacturer guessed that this would probably be from the, gosh, I don't even know. I want to say the 60s, maybe 70s. But I know they've come a long way since then. I don't even know what model. I know like Caterpillars have like different type of models, but I'm sure someone out there could tell me some more information about this. Even has a little winch back there. Donated to McDade Park by Harold Kaplan Ovich. I'm curious though if it even ran when they brought it here. I wonder if they actually drove it here and parked it, or if it had to be hauled here itself. And directly under the hopper we do have an old Mack dump truck here, which is in surprisingly decent condition, probably for the fact that it's underneath here and not getting rained on completely, but I'd imagine it's not the original color, but I do like it though. It's definitely past its prime, I'll tell you that, but still a cool piece of history. And believe it or not, the motor's still in there. I'm not sure what it is, but it is quite massive. Got the iconic Mack emblem right there. Okay, so just up this road is where the ticket office is and everything we were checking out. If you take a little stroll down here, you actually come upon the fan house. And you might be able to hear it, but right there is the fan, which is currently operating. That's used to suck and push air through the mine. So basically it's a constant ventilation system where this is exhausting the air coming out of the mine, and it's at the same time sucking in fresh air where the opening is for the portal. So there's a constant supply of fresh air coming through when this is operating. Yeah, you can see there's a little plaque here which does basically do the same thing of explaining what I just said, but in a more professional way. But it does say 22,000 cubic feet of air per minute through the mine. Right next to it here, you will have a capsule-like device. It's more or less like an elevator that's controlled by a hoist inside this building. And believe it or not, I actually rode in that. I have a quick story I'll tell you. Sometime in the early 2000s, I was maybe in my early 20s, and I took the day off of work and decided to come here and take the tour. I had nothing else to do. It was a hot summer day, and down in the mines it's always in the low 50s, so it's basically like natural air conditioning. Well, when I was down there, there was a group on a tour, and they were actually mayors of the surrounding towns. I think there was at least a half dozen, maybe to a dozen of them. They took the mine tour that day, and they were actually on their way up the slope to exit the mine tour, and they were in the yellow cart, the man cart that takes you up, and halfway up there the axle on that cart broke. Well, needless to say, the people, the mayors in that cart, had to walk the rest of the way up, but with that cart breaking down, it actually blocked that portal, that slope. So the rest of us that were down in the mine had no way to get out using that exit or entrance, and that's where this comes into play. We had to all congregate underground underneath this hoist here, this capsule, and literally they had to bring this down and hoist us out of there, 2 to 3 people at a time. That's all it fits in there. So, you know, there was well over 20 people down there because there was multiple groups down there at once. So it was a time-consuming process. I wanted to take my time and watch people go through because I was really, you know, I was really enjoying it, even though it was a kind of a scary situation. It was neat to see though, something that gets used, I should say that's never used typically during the mine tour. So I was able to get hoisted out of the mine 300 feet from below the surface inside that capsule. I actually rode up with a mother and her little daughter, her young daughter, and it was an experience I'll never forget, I'll tell you that. Very similar though, this may look familiar, they've used it in mine rescues. I think maybe the Chilean mine rescue, or there's a different one. I remember watching a documentary on it, and they had to drill a borehole and lower down a capsule like that to lift the miners out from the mine itself. So definitely something that you most likely won't have to encounter when you're here, but I thought it was worth sharing with you because it was a very unique experience. Just to show you the inside really quick, this is all it is. It's just a little empty capsule, big enough for 2 to 3 people depending on how big you are, and the door actually slides. All they do is lift this up. There's like a manhole cover right here. They open that up and it drops straight down, vertical shaft, 300 feet. And it's all connected by a single braided cable that goes into the building and is hooked up to a hoist in there. Just a reminder to stick around to the end of this video for a photo montage. I'm snapping a lot of great photos today, and I'll share them at the end of this video. And with all the dangers involved in coal mining, they actually have their own firefighting equipment to handle any type of emergencies down there. This is a basically a flat car or cart, and they mount it hoses and tanks to extinguish any potential hazards. And it shows that this one came from the Huber Colliery in Ashley. I was actually kind of curious what this was, and it's a rock loader. Used to load a car with rock from the rock tunnel. So here we have the original mine hoist back when this mine was in operation. And it's hard to tell from the video, but this is pretty massive. And it's very similar to the one I've showed you at the Glenburn Mine Colliery in Shamokin. The hoist is still there. Hoist House was demolished or fell apart on its own, but this would have been, you know, wherever they were using it, housed in a hoist house just like that. And I'll show you the other side of it where they do have the controls and the gauge on there to show the depth in the mine. Now here we have the control operators area of the hoist. You got a big lever there to release the brake, and right there is a gauge which would show you, they would have had something painted on there to show you how far down in the mine it was. But this is a good look at the operator's position of this massive hoist, and they have a visual cue, and you may have heard in the distance too, at least here they use a buzzer to signal, like one buzz go, two buzz stops, something like that, to keep, you know, communication between the operator and the coal miner. So here I just want to give you guys a size perspective for myself compared to the hoist. And you can see this is a gargantuan piece of equipment here, and as big it's as big as it is for having to pull up all the weighted coal cars and materials and men and everything else. But this goes to show, though, they really built things to last, and this being original, it's still holding together quite well. So earlier we heard the hoistmen doing the signal calls, and this is what they mean. It's how they communicate down below with raps or whistles. Just to make mention one more time, directly behind the mining area is the Anthracite Heritage Museum. It is open to the public. All you do is drive around the back and you come up there. It is an additional charge, but it's a much larger museum, much more in-depth, a lot more information and artifacts to check out. So, as I mentioned, if you're already here, definitely consider taking a walk in there and seeing what they have to show you. Now, you might be able to hear in the background, there's dozens of little screaming kids. That's because a few school buses rolled up to do the mine tour, and it kind of affected our plans a little bit. We came here early hoping to get the first mine tour, but they're getting priority because it's a scheduled class trip, so we got bumped ahead to the 11:30 trip. So the kids will be going down first, which is fine by me because it kind of would possibly ruin the experience having a bunch of screaming kids in that little mine car crammed together. So I guess they're going to take care of them first, and then we'll be going down at the 11:30 trip, and hopefully we won't run into any issues. So in the meantime, we're just going to hang out here, get some footage of the car going down, check out the hoist house, and then we'll be ready to go down ourselves. Okay, so right here we have a little information plaque about the coal fields in Pennsylvania, and they have a little diagram here, and it shows bituminous coal is mainly out in western Pennsylvania, and the solid is anthracite, which is a harder, cleaner burning coal, which is much more preferred by people who purchase it, whether it be companies or residential. So here is a closer look at the hoist house, and we're actually going to head in there and get some footage of the hoist operator sending the mine car back down into the mine.
Okay, go down.
Okay, going down.
So right now we are actually in the Hoist House, and they gave us permission to check it out up close. So we don't touch anything, but here's the gauge I was telling you about, how they could tell, you know, how far down they are. It says loading right there, blocks, knuckle. And then big electric motor back there. Pardon me? Yes. And right there is the mine cart. So while you're up here in this building, adjacent to the Hoist House, they do have a little small museum here you can check out. And I believe this is completely free. But they have some tables you can sit at. And they have some old documents and information to look at. A lot of cool pictures and equipment like the miners' lamps, helmets, various other items. You can see some of the carbide lamps down here in the case, safety lamps, all types of stuff that was used for the production of coal. There's all different types of material. Look at this cannel coal. That's different. It's like, it's almost like dull. Got no shine to it. And here's, you can tell the difference here. Anthracite, this shines like a diamond. Big difference. So if you come here, definitely take a walk up here. Check it out. Some pretty cool stuff to look at and information to read to kind of help get you more into the excuse me, experience of being here as a coal miner. There we have Glenburn Mine. I just mentioned that earlier. I know this is probably already a pretty long video and we haven't even gotten down into the mine yet, but definitely stay tuned, watch the whole thing, because once we head underground it's going to get even more interesting. I'm not going to show the whole entire tour because it's an hour long, but I'm going to more or less show highlights of it and some of the cool things you can expect to see underground. And for those of you that have coal burning stoves at home, you may want to grab this chunk of coal right here. This will probably last you the whole winter. 13,000 pound black diamond. So it weighs 6.5 tons. Marion 8700 drag line. Donated 1988. And on the back side of the loading platform is a little picture here. It says the Slope 190 story, and it's actually significant because they do talk about Slope 190, the Clark vein, down in the mine tour. So if you come here prior to going down, you can get a little background information on it and have a better understanding as to what they're talking about. Got someone watching us. think he's digging a new hole. Alright, so as you can see, we got our hard hats on and we got a group of people ready to go, and we'll be heading down next. The car just came up, emptied off a load of kids, and we're going to be boarding and making our descent down 300 feet underground.
Now, when we get to the edge there, the car's going to tilt backwards a little bit. It shoots up to about 60 miles an hour, so you're going to... No, I'm just kidding.
If it does that, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
No cable. You just have to worry about that sudden stop.
It's actually a speed governor on the car. It'll kick in if it gets too fast. Of course, on the slope, that won't much matter. It'll slide down anyway. Coming up now on the original entrance to the mine. All right, folks, when I open the door, exit to the rear, follow the yellow arrows. There's a sign on the pole back there that says the tour starts here. I'll catch up with you there. Now, the method of removing coal here is something called room and pillar. The miners call it room and pillar, chamber and pillar mining. So as they come in with that gangway, they get in here about 40 feet, and then they start a chamber. The chambers, when coal is on pitch, the coal is always mined downhill. So they start back up to the surface with a chamber. Continue on with the gangway, they get another 40 feet up, they go with another chamber, and so on. When the chamber gets up to be about 60 feet, they do a cross cut back to the previous chamber. And that's how this, what looks like a checker, it doesn't really look like that, but that's the idea. The checkerboard gets cut out in this coal seam. Now, all those cross cuts are for ventilation. Notice the red lines there. Those are air stops. In the very oldest days of mining, they used a heavy cloth called Bradish cloth. And they would block off wherever they weren't going to be working so they could direct air to wherever they were going to be working. Pillars of coal are what's holding up the ceiling. The props, timbers don't really, I mean, that's countless tons of rock. These little toothpicks can't hold that up. What these are here for mainly is an early warning system for the miners. If there's going to be what the miners call a squeeze, these will start to crackle and break. It hopefully happens slow enough that it's just a little crackling at first. This half mile or this quarter mile of mine is the only safe area in this entire coal field. It's the only one that's maintained and inspected. So never go in an abandoned mine. And the primary reason is, as I said, we have to circulate air. In some mines, and of course it varies from mine to mine and with the topography, but in this particular mine, we have a problem with the miners called black damp. In fact, where you're standing right here in the middle of the night, the air is poisonous by the time we get to the middle of the night. Black damp is actually carbon dioxide. It's the byproduct of the decomposition of organic material, including a coal.
Jeez.
There you go.
It's walled off.
Our coal chambers are 300 feet long. I'm sorry, 100 feet long. No, 300 feet long, 100 yards. Up there at the top is another gangway similar to this one. 300 feet down is another gangway. similar to this one, but the coal from here came down to this gangway. That one went down to the gangway below. That's underwater now. Now, mining is skilled labor, but in the very old days of mining, the miner did all the work necessary to get the coal out. That included, in some cases, cutting down his own timbers and dragging them down here in the mine. The Clark seam of coal is 8 to 12 feet thick, so you can see it took some substantial timbers to timber up your ceiling here. He was also skilled in placing his charges so that he could blast out coal and leave pillars to support the ceiling. And then, of course, he'd have to climb up on something here to wedge these in place. Even when this mine opened, it was a corporate mine, the Continental Coal Company. Even in those days, if a miner had help with this work, he paid the help out of his own pocket. So those jobs were kind of hard to come by. Imagine falling off a wet, old rickety ladder onto that stone right there. Just walking on this is like walking on broken dishes 2 or 3 feet deep. Oh. Miners had nicknames for everything, but the nicknames in different coal fields were different for different things. It might be the same nickname for different machines. The next tour down, the Loki is something else. Here, this is what they call the Loki, electric locomotive, Loki. The motorman sat there, and the switchman sat here on the back, coupled in a couple of cars. This took the place of the Mules when electricity came into the mines in the early part of the 20th century. Now, it was connected to they call that the trolley wire. It was connected to the trolley wire by a fantastic invention. That's a tree branch. All through the mine, you'll see these pipes hanging down and still have the clamps on them. That's where the trolley wire went. There was one on each side of the gangway. Now, that's a bare electrical wire. You're walking on the Mercedes of mine floors here. This has been leveled for you and the boardwalk put in. The miners would be walking in very, very dim lighting over railroad ties in mud puddles, sometimes up to their ankles or shins, and loose rubble. If he slipped and fell or came in contact with that wire, somehow it was going to be a bad day in the mine for him and anybody else in the same puddle. So it just added another danger to what was already a dangerous job. This coal chamber here has been converted to a mechanics pit. That's all this is here. They did as much mechanical work in the mine as possible because it is always this temperature. It's 15 degrees on the surface, about 50 down here, in our particular mine anyway. And when it's 95, it's about 50 degrees down here, except it gets a little foggy. When you see benches in a car like this, it's called a man trip. The benches easily slide out to make it a coal trip. Notice the benches are angled for roughly the angle of the slope for the comfort of the miners. This is how we get in and out in the winter. We take the luxury ride you came down on, and if you look up by our Tipple, by the way, our Tipple is real. That was used until the 1960s. If you go down to Eckley Miners Village, the Tipple looks like an authentic old Tipple, but it's not. That one's fake. It was built for a movie. You know that this is a telephone. Telephone. The little kids look and they go, no. To communicate with other areas of the mine, this was how they did it. You rang this phone, all the phones rang. Later on, you'll hear me make an all call, and then I'll have a private conversation with whoever answers. So you had to ring a code. So if I wanted the foreman, he might be in the foot shanty. He'd be 2 rings, and then I'd wait for 2 rings back, and that's how they would communicate. Now, the only thing really amazing about this phone is if I connect it to another phone just like it, they still work. It's over 100 years old. The black damp, the gas, the test for that, you've heard the phrase 1,000 times, I'm sure, a canary in the coal mine. Why a canary? Well, he's yellow, easier to see in the dark with bright yellow birds. And also, they breathe 200 times faster than we do. So they bring him down here and they'd hold this cage, slowly lower him down near the floor. If you got a little bit woozy, a little bit nervous, fell off the perch, they know there was black damp down there. And so they would clear the area and tell the foreman. You have to redirect some air. Now, not in this mine, but in this coal field, about 15 miles to the south of us, my mother's father was killed in an explosion of what the miners call fire damp. To us, that's methane gas. Fire damp is lighter than oxygenated air. Now, remember, this is our sample coal face, but the coal face is actually at the top of a chamber. Remember, they always mine the coal downhill. So since methane is lighter than air, if it was going to gather, it would be up there at the top of that chamber. So he'd put the bird cage on this hook right here. And he'd walk on up there. The bird got a little bit woozy, fell off the perch. We know some fire damp. We have to clear out immediately. Now, in those old days of mining, it's really dangerous because we have an open flame. You walk into fire damp and ignite it. If you live through the explosion, it left what the miners called after damp, which was a corrosive gas. So it would be just more merciful to die in the explosion. So this sucks in a little bit of air here to keep the flame alive. And if I lower it down in the black damp, there's not enough oxygen, the flame will start to get blue and shrink, and eventually if it goes out, that means there's no oxygen, and you're in trouble. And if I hold it up into fire damp, but it'll suck in a little bit of that gas, and the flame will get bright orange and start to grow. And some of these are actually have graduation lines on them, and that'll start to grow. Now, the Davy lamp had an itsy bitsy little flaw in it. Remember I said how difficult it was to walk on that rubble? If the miner were walking up there with his Davy lamp, and he slipped in the rubble and turned the lamp sideways, it ignited the gas. It was actually causing the explosions. Yeah. This is a modern mine safety lamp. You can get one on eBay for about $100. If you absolutely positively must go into an abandoned mine, take one of these. Because the electronic sensors are really expensive. Now, it is no longer legal to test the air with this. The air here was tested with an electronic sensor, and the oxygen level down here is exactly what it is on the surface, more than what it would have been for the miners. All right. Now, this is not here as a prop, by the way. This is here to test the air. Now, the air was tested officially with the correct equipment, but this gangway, this continues past that stopping. Notice the door is open there. That door is open just enough to balance the airflow between our two fans. Beyond that stopping, this gangway continues for miles and miles. So there's chambers up and down and so on. It's a maze. One of those chambers goes all the way to the surface, and that's our #1 air shaft. I was on the tours here, and I said, if I hold this down and it turns blue and goes out, and I held it down and it turned blue and went out. Well, the look of panic on my face was multiplied 1,000 times. The foreman forgot to fill it with fuel, but it went out right on cue. I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect. Right on cue. Now, we're going to get 150 feet from the blast, okay? And we're going to go around 2 corners because the coal can ricochet around one, and that's coming out of the speed of a bullet. And of course, we warn everybody that we're going to fire the shot. Fire! Fire! 3 directions. Fire in the hole! And then you wait 30 seconds. My little kid started to cry when that. All right, this is my wife and son. She always has a long face, but she works like a mule. The mules came here. They lived in a mine like this. The mules stayed in the mine around the clock. Because in the old days, I say old days, I'm referring mostly before 1902. In the old days, they ran 2 12-hour shifts. If they had to pump water, then they were going to dig coal. So there's actually a mule stable down here in Clarkson. Now, mules lived as long as 18 years in mines. They were very well cared for. They went blind from being in the darkness, but other than that, they were very well cared for because you had to buy a mule. You didn't have to buy another worker. More children. Oh, Lord. I'm so sorry. The mule driver, that's a job for a boy about 14 years old. On his head, that's a carbide lamp. And the bottom is calcium carbide, the top is water. Water drips on the carbide, makes acetylene gas. That's what's burning on his forehead. That's all the light that he has to work with. So 2 of these, when this was full like that, at the mule, this is what the floor of the mine would look like, except it'd be a lot wetter than this. So the mule could trip on the ties, slip in the mud, turn his ankles on a rock here. If any of that happened, and he started to lose control of that trip, he'd yell back to the sprag boy or the spragger, "Sprag that wheel!" And the kid would get down there and he'd jam us into the spokes of that wheel, and it'd come up and catch on the wheel assembly and stop the trip. Organic material. This was leaves, this was trees, this was all kinds of, anything that grew in a tropical swamp. A tropical swamp. 350 million years ago, this was the surface of the planet, and we were south of the equator. There were only 2 continents on the planet. In between them, the ocean, Iapetus Ocean. So as those continents were moving toward one another, there were constant changes in the surface, and over a period of 97 million years, a freshwater swamp, vast freshwater swamp formed here. It was the Carboniferous era of the planet. Huge ferns, huge trees, huge leaves would grow, and then the material fell down into the water, sank to the bottom, not enough oxygen for it to decompose. Then, of course, the surface would change again. That would bring in the ocean, and the ocean would bring in the sand. There it is, the ancient beach above us and below us in this case. And that happened more than 10 times over that period of 97 million years here. Now, eventually, by the way, 1 foot of anthracite, 11 feet of plant material. To give you an idea how deep some of these swamps were. Finally, the Iapetus Ocean becomes extinct. These 2 continents collide, and they begin pushing against each other. That's where the pressure came from to generate the heat that began pressing that plant material into anthracite. At one time, these mountains were higher than the Himalayas, and they're some of the oldest mountains on the world. Now, A little bit of pressure and heat in that becomes peat, like peat moss. That's still burned for fuel. A little bit more heat and pressure becomes lignite, brown coal. A little bit more heat and pressure becomes bituminous coal, soft coal. That's still coming out of West Virginia and Western Pennsylvania by the trainload as we speak. It's still generating about 23% of America's electricity. A little bit more heat and pressure becomes the highest quality coal there is, anthracite. This is the largest deposit of it anywhere in the world in these 4 coal fields. This is the highest quality coal you can get. It runs hotter, longer, and cleaner than all the other coals. He's in here filling out his daily log. That happens here every morning. This mine is inspected by qualified anthracite foreman every day. By law, we must follow the same rules as an operating mine because we bring people down here. So we have, today it's the assistant foreman that's here. Filling out his logbook, and that already happened today. In the old days, he's the only guy with any kind of rescue breathing apparatus. Of course, you see he's got his mine lamp there. Today, the Sarah's tested with electronic sensors. He's also in charge of keeping track who's in and out of the mine. Now, he wouldn't actually be here. He would be at the foot of the slope. That's been converted to a heated waiting room for you. All right, this used to be at the foot of the slope, but about 10 miles to the south of us here in this coal field, 200 acres of underground mine collapsed in 1896, I think it was. And this was in the mine, and they didn't know who was in or out. So actually, there's still men buried there. So after that, they kept us on the surface, and now it's in a much different way. But give you an idea of what it would be like to have to go up there. That's really the scene of falling to bring in. This is the Dunmore number 2 seam of coal. Now this coal is really, really dirty, so it doesn't look like coal. That's because we're using this as a ventilation shaft. Now, the other tour guides call this a monkey vein. I do not. A monkey vein is a vein that you can walk hunched over like a monkey. You're not going to get too far up there walking like that. This is another belly vein. If you had your choice, would you work in a belly vein like this or the Clark vein?
Clark.
Yeah, this is where the miners would rather work. Not me, because I'm claustrophobic, but look at the size of the props. One timber back there might make 6 props in this vein. I don't have to climb on anything. That takes that danger out of it. I don't need any help, so there's no problem there. Most importantly, when the rock top and the rock bottom are closer together, you get more coal with less explosive. And they had to buy the explosive from the company. So they actually made a little bit more money if they work in a vein like this. Now, unfortunately, 60 feet up there is a crosscut. By the way, there are no crosscuts to our left. That gangway is a dead end right around the corner. They did drive gangway on this side, and we're going to go into that gangway. Again, you're looking at the hybrid of coal here. Now, 60 feet up is a crosscut, and so on. Until that crosscut is functional, there's more and more and more dust. And this is where these guys are breathing in the coal dust. And then when electricity came in, this was one of the machines they used. This is a shaker chute. If it wasn't dusty enough up there, this is shaking the coal down here to the gangway. Imagine what OSHA would say about the exposed belts and springs and the exposed chain gear back there on the jalopy. Those are also posed some real dangers. So a miner would be walking along and a chunk of the ceiling would drop right out on them. Now, that could be a little chunk, or it could be what we saw back there at the fault line. Now imagine what a boulder that size would do to a human body. The other miners would retrieve, such as it was, that would be left on the front porch for the wife to find, in whatever condition it was in. Sometimes the children found them first. The coal barons, as they were called, did everything they could for as long as they could. 6th grader asked me this question. Now you can imagine the most popular question, where do they go to the bathroom? Right? A 6th grader asked me the question, how they circulate air before electricity. That was a good question. I'm a kid. A steam engine. But if it was a shaft mine, all you need was a furnace. About 20 miles to the south of us, this coal field was 1869. The Avondale mine was a shaft mine, ventilated with a furnace. The furnace caused an updraft at the bottom of the shaft that would pull air down to air shafts. Now the breaker, in those days it would have been an old wooden breaker, was right on top of the shaft. For efficiency, the coal went right up the shaft, right to the top of the breaker building, and started being crushed down right size it. The official story is somehow embers got out of that furnace and set fire to the timbers. Well, the more likely story, commonly believed that the Hall Inquirer set the fire. It is my personal opinion that they did not mean to kill anyone, especially other miners. But I just think that they didn't have the wherewithal to realize that they were starting a fire in a draft. So that fire just exploded with that draft, shot right up to the breaker, and in no time that old wooden breaker collapsed right into the shaft. Not only blocking the exit, but stopping airflow to the mine. By the time they got to the miners, 110 men and boys had suffocated to death. Father and son, each other's arms. 14-year-old boy on his first day of work. So in 1870, Pennsylvania passed a law, no more breakers on top of the shaft, and every mine must have a second opening. The second opening for the miners that created this gangway and these chambers is not this. They had, now imagine there being an emergency of some kind in this mine. They didn't have electric lighting like this. They'd have to make their way back to that Clark scene, to that air shaft I told you about. That is the official second exit for the miners here. This is here for you. 1985 cost me $1 million to drop this borehole. It's lined with the same stuff the Alaskan pipeline is made of. At the top is an escape capsule already hooked to its very own winch with its very own generator for power stuff. So if we can't get out the way we came in, I'll signal the surface. They'll pull me up and I'll throw shovels down for you guys.
Thanks.
So this is looking at the bottom of that capsule tunnel that I actually rode in. We lowered right down into here, we loaded into it, and 250 feet to the surface.
All right, but for machinery, and again, there's not enough pitch here for gravity to bring this pole down. In this particular case, the miner has to blast out. So every time he blasts, he adds to his ditch. Now, before they replace the lights with these LED lights, you can see that little. If you were working up in your chamber and you lost your light, you were in trouble. Now, quite literally, you're the light at the end of the tunnel, so your eyes are going to adjust. But for just a few seconds, you have an idea of what the miner would be up against. Now, what you'd have to do now is pull out a smartphone, turn on the flashlight. The miner would have to crawl down the chamber into the gangway here and then feel around in that filthy water. By the way, the bathroom question, everywhere. So we'll call it water, but I'm making air quotes, okay? Feel around with his foot until he finds the rail. Then get down on his hands and knees in that filthy water and crawl along that rail until he came to someone who would get him relit, share fuel, or lead him out. Now from this point, this gangway, we can only go one direction. Back there in the Clark, if we got turned around in the dark here, we could go in the wrong direction for miles. Odorless, colorless, tasteless. By the time you realize you're in black tap, it's too late. He's going to pass out and drown in the water or suffocate. Now, if I had the kerosene lamp, this is the light I work by during the day. Now imagine here in northeastern Pennsylvania in the winter, if I had day shift, I got here, it was dark, I left it was dark, and this is the light I work by during the day. Never heard a miner complain of seasonal affective disorder.
So this is the face of the mine. This is where they finally stopped working during production, and this is how it looks, basically how they left it. By the way, make sure if you guys are enjoying this pretty awesome experience, drop a like down below and leave your comments. Tell me what you think so far. Here's some of the sludge that we often see in some of the mines I have been into. Seems like it's a common thing with these places. Look, it's like the knob and tube wiring. It's like a little cavity. It goes as far back as we could see. All right, so after taking the tour, I received my miner certificate, which makes me a certified coal miner, almost. On the back here, it does have some information I want to show you really quick, which is pretty interesting for the pay rates back in 1902. It might be hard to see with the sun here, but it says Continental Mine 1902. And just to go over some of them, laborer 18 cents an hour, nipper 11 cents, barn cleaner 21 cents, and I'll leave it here for a minute. If you want to read the rest of it, just pause the video. Alright guys, that was a look at the Lackawanna County Coal Mine Tour located here at McDade Park in Scranton, Pennsylvania. A couple quick things I want to mention first is if you do decide to come here, make sure you dress appropriately. Down in the mine it's roughly 52-53 degrees year round. You want to have good footwear. It is wet, it's damp, and I recommend wearing like a hoodie or a sweater or a jacket just because it is considerably cooler depending on what time of year you come. But right now it's in the upper 60s, low 70s here. Down there's a big difference, and if you come in the heat of the summer, you'll really feel it. It's like natural air conditioner. Aside from that though, I had a great time taking this tour today. I've been on this probably over 20 times since I've been a little kid, and I never really get sick of it. It's something that I'm really fascinated and passionate about, and it really helps tie in together everything I've been showing you in my videos over the past couple months and years with the abandoned mine sites, abandoned mines, and the equipment we talk about, the process of mining, and now we really got a detailed look at how and why and what they did to make a living for their families and to produce coal for the coal companies. So you guys have any comments, questions, or thoughts, make sure you leave them down below. Mike, you have any thoughts?
It's well, for $10 it's well worth your trip. I mean, it's about an hour long, give or take, and I haven't been here in over probably 20 years, 25 years, but it is nice to see. It really is.
And remember, he'll have a video from today with a slideshow, as well as my photos that will be at the end of this video for a photo montage. But last time I was here, I think it was around 3-4 years ago, I did bring my daughter Lily. We had a great time. Kids, I believe, are $7.50 for ages 12 and under. Adults are $10, but you really get your money's worth. I mean, the mine itself is a whole hour-long tour, but you have everything here to walk around and check out. The little gift shop in there. There's a little smaller museum, then there's a bigger museum up there, which is an additional cost, but there's a lot to see, a lot to do. And if you guys made it through the entire video, I just want to thank you for making it that long. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it entertaining and informative. And as I mentioned, if you're ever in the area of Scranton or even down in Ashland, definitely take the coal mine tour. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and something you'll never be able to experience unless you do it for yourself. So if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like down below. Don't forget you can follow me on Facebook, as well as check out my Patreon page and my merchandise shop. All those links can be found down below in the description. So thanks so much for watching, and like always, we'll see you in the next video.